Good morning, Talk Shop time. Just about 8 o'clock. What we have ahead is good stuff. 8:10, your Talk Shop time in Studio 255 at the Laramie Plains Civic Center. This morning we have return guest Dr. Kevin Kilty, and in the segment ahead we're going to talk about your utility bill. Dr. Kilty, what did you bring today? Flip charts and all.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, these flip charts look pretty old tech, and maybe people can see what's on them.
We're going to call you the retro professor.
Yeah, wouldn't be a bad title. It's better than I've been called, that's for sure.
Me too. Me too.
But at any rate, we've talked about this before, that people have trouble reading their utility bill. And in fact, talking with some ex-colleagues of mine, they said these are people with PhDs. These are people with PhDs in a technical field. And they said, I can tell that my power bill has gone up lately, but I can't read my power bill and make heads or tails out of it. So I thought a little segment here about the power bill and how the Public Service Commission, in kind of an overview, sets rates and so forth. And the first thing is that a person has to realize about your power system, and we were talking about this yesterday offline, is that your power system is what's called a perpetuity. It is a service or a good that you expect to be around forever. And as it wears out, you replace it, and so forth. And you got to figure out how to pay for perpetuities. And as you, Eric, know, government's very bad about figuring out how to pay for perpetuities. They can spend a lot of money to get them started. Keeping them going is another matter entirely. And
tax!
Tax! Well, of course.
More tax!
This is true. But if you think about it for a second, take the $200 million bridge to nowhere. Do you remember that nonsense in Alaska?
I do.
A bridge that was enormously expensive to build, and it served 200 people or something like that. It was almost no one. That bridge is going to wear out like all other bridges do. Where do the tax revenues come from it, and why should people all over Alaska pay for that particular bridge? These are good questions, and people in the public sphere don't think about them, I think, nearly enough. But let's talk about it today. What's required? And what's required generally, we've got my little equation over here on the board, and by God, I've got a pointer with me. I thought about bringing a pointer even today, so I can.
Did you bring high-tech laser or?
No, I brought the thing that's used to recover screws that fall down in the engine.
The magnet.
Yeah, the magnet. At any rate,
needed revenue.
The needed revenue.
Who needs revenue?
The utility needs the revenue to maintain your perpetuity. And so here we go. Here are the various categories of expenditures on the part of the utility, and they've got to be covered. So this is a great one, O&M. If you use the words O&M, it sounds like you really know what you're talking about. That's operations and maintenance. Those are just immediate expenses that the utility has. And then they have to pay for the taxes. A lot of people don't understand this, and they think that somehow if the utility gets taxed, that's the county getting money for it's just free money. It comes out of the pockets of the people who use the utility.
Who pays for taxes?
Who pays for, citizens?
Who's the only source? Pay for taxes?
The only source of this money is the citizen, is the customer. And sometimes the customer is coerced. They aren't even a customer, but they still end up paying, taxes and so forth. So if anybody thinks that
slaves to the need.
If anybody thinks that, say, your new wind power plant is just going to deliver money to the county from some other source someplace, you don't realize that the ratepayers are going to cover that, really. And that could be you. It's just taking money out of one.
It's a different form of pass-through, isn't it?
It is. Now, all your capital expenses, all of your plant and equipment and so forth depreciates. And so there'll be a depreciation expense. And this is the mysterious one down here, net power cost, known as NPC in the Public Services Commission.
We love acronyms in this day and age.
We do.
More and more.
We
and
do.
Why is that? Well, it's not transparent.
Well, that is a real selling point for uh, things like that. But of course, we use these words over and over again in reports, and nobody likes to write net power cost all the time when you can just say NPC. But it's a real dog's breakfast of stuff. It is defined as any expenditure that has to be made because your station power is inadequate. So if you have to go out to the market and buy power in the market and so forth, that goes into net power costs. And then there's this one down here that people don't always recognize, but the Public Utility Commission will allow the utility some rate of return on the rate base. And so your capital expenditures, the investments that the utility makes in their system, goes into the rate base, and then the Public Service Commission will allow a return on the rate base. And so you multiply those two together, and that is a return. And people sometimes confuse depreciation with this. They are separate items. Depreciation is meant for you to recapture the capital costs that you put into your system, and the rate base and a return on it is what gives you access to the capital markets so that you can borrow money. If you don't have a decent rate of return on your rate base, you will have trouble borrowing money. Okay. Now, then, if we can still see this down here at the bottom, the rate that you charge your customers then has to be this revenue divided by what you estimate the sales are going to be. And this is an estimation, right? The utility doesn't know exactly in the next time period what their sales are really going to be. You can have customers not use as much power as the utility thinks. Customers may disappear and so forth. And so there's always some risk down here. And this risk is called a volumetric risk if the power company misestimates how much they're going to sell. Okay, so we've now covered basically what goes on. And I've made this look like there's just a single rate here, but it's a complicated set of schedules because you have industrial customers, commercial customers, residential customers, other odd uses of power like water wells for cows and so forth. And so the utility has a large table of schedules per customer. And the hope is, and they work pretty hard on this, and the Office of Consumer Advocate does also, they want to make sure that one class of power user isn't subsidizing another. You are supposedly charged for what it costs to get power to you. All right, let's look at this next sheet. This is somebody's bill. I think I've got this flip chart's very irritating, and that's, let's look at the gas utility first. So this is just a bill, a typical bill. You could get your bill here in Laramie and have a quick look at it. Your gas bill shows your history of usage over the past year, and maybe that's useful for people. This is my December bill, and I used, and here's now something that's interesting. People say, I tell them a unit like kilowatt hour or therms, and people say, I don't understand that at all. Okay, a therm is a measure of the heating value in the gas that's being delivered to your house. It's an unfortunate unit. It's an old English unit, and the better unit for us is 10 therms at a time, which is called a decatherm. And a decatherm is essentially a million BTUs. Those are also English units. None of that means much to you, but it's an indication of what heating value that fuel has when it's delivered to your house. So here's December. I used 211 therms. And your meter outside your house measures in how many hundreds of cubic feet of gas was delivered to your house. The gas is measured by volume delivered to your house, but its heating value is predicated on how much mass was in that volume of gas. So the gas company has to make an adjustment for the gas pressure, which this factor right here is just about exactly what our air pressure is in Laramie. So the higher you go and the lower you go, this pressure factor changes. And then the particular gas that you're currently using maybe has some adjustment because it was a higher heating value gas or a slightly lower heating value gas and so forth. A good example of a gas that has a low heating value would be gas with a lot of water vapor in it. And people may remember that Texas had trouble with that some 5 years ago when they had their February problem down there. The gas they delivered had too much water vapor in it, and it froze up in places because of unusual temperatures. It costs money to remove water vapor from gas, and gas contains water vapor because it came from underground and was in contact with water there. Okay, at any rate, they just give me the billing details, and really what we have on here is just a number of fees that are predicated on how much energy that gas delivered to my house. And you can see that in the summer, you get down to about 31 therms, and that's gas that's just used to heat domestic hot water because we don't need heating in Laramie.
Your pilot light.
Pilot lights, yeah, they will burn some amount of gas and so forth. But in the winter, you need a lot. And look at this here, about 219 therms last December, 211 this December. There was a little bit of a difference in the environmental temperature between those two Decembers and so forth. So that's, and of course, there's always taxes and fees in all of these, so that the local government gets something out of delivery of this energy to your house. Okay. Oh, and another thing to talk about, in Laramie here, we have the choice of natural gas supplier, and you can make a sort of an educated guess about who is going to have the lowest cost gas for the next year or 2 years, and make a choice of who you want to be.
Of all of the choices in the last 10 years, have you changed frequently your source supplier?
I have tried to change every 2 years. And what I have learned by doing that is that you can't tell. Basically, I got a good price from, forget who it was at this point, but it doesn't matter. And during the course of my 2-year choice, the Black Hills Energy in just the default gas that they get turned out to, that price went up and down some. They turned out to be the lowest in the end. So I think it doesn't matter a lot in the long run. Let's look at the electric utility bill. And I thought this flip chart, I thought I put this together in a clever way that was really going to make it easy to just flip pages over, but of course that isn't really true. Darn it.
Dr. Kevin Kilty with us today, exploring our utility bills.
Uh-oh. Yeah, this has been really not clever. It glued itself together over there. All right. Here is a electric utility bill from last mid-September to mid-October. And let's just look at the charges on it. One of the things they do, for example, where is it? This is Schedule 2. There are lots of schedules. Rocky Mountain Power has schedules for all different classes of customers. Schedule 2 is a typical residential rate that doesn't require anything particularly special. I might have 3-phase delivery, or I might have single-phase delivery. I got single-phase to my house. So this gives you the period. It tells you how many days were involved, and I used 588 kilowatt hours of electricity. And I have people telling me, I don't understand what a kilowatt hour is. A watt is a measure of power. It's how fast you're trying to do work. And a kilowatt hour, power times some length of time, an hour, is a measure of energy. And energy is what they sell. So I used 588 kilowatt hours in those 29 days. Those 29 days are 696 hours in that month. So I'm running my house on average with a less than a kilowatt hour. And I think that's rather amazing. At one time, your refrigerator would use more than that. And now appliances have become more efficient. I know everybody loves to complain about them. But if you spend a little bit of money, you get pretty good quality appliances now. Of your charges, you have a basic charge of $23 a month, and that's just to pay for local equipment and connection to the grid. But then you have an energy charge, and you'll notice that there's, first thing in here, and I don't have one, but there's it doesn't talk about this, but there's an insurance cost adjustment. Insurance costs have become a bothersome part in public electric distribution systems because, as you know, they've had some fabulous fires in Colorado and in California that have caused a lot of property damage. So insurance costs have risen a lot, and insurance companies are very worried about the risks they're now
Is that
carrying.
distribution across the nation for the insurance cost adjustment, to your knowledge, is that consistent across the United States, or does it vary state by state?
I suspect it varies quite a lot from one place to another, and Pacific Corp, who is the owner of Rocky Mountain Power, had some judgments against them out of Oregon, and that is what has led to our insurance costs here in Wyoming. We've shared in that because we're part of Pacific Corp. If you remember, the fire down at Superior, Colorado, that burned 1,000 homes down there, I think we still don't really know how that fire got started. There were two entities involved, one of which was XL Energy, and the other was some church or some group that had some facilities in the area just exactly coincident with where that fire started. And the fire department had responded that day to that fire. But as you probably know, especially if you've ever been a member of a volunteer fire department, wildfires are very difficult to tell if you've got them put out or not. I was involved in a fire in 1975 that occurred in early October, and it got into a grove of trees and got into some of the deadfall in that grove of trees, and worked all day with the volunteer fire department, thought we had it out. 6 weeks later, in a really windy night, I noticed flames out in there, and the wind had reignited that fire. They're difficult to tell. And so we had two possibilities. People who had equipment in that area, well, one of them's a tiny entity. What insurance do they have? The other one's XL. So you can guess that it's a battle to see who pays what and all of that. Okay, so there's an insurance cost. There's an energy charge here, and that's the basic energy charge, and you'll notice that is 8.136 cents per kilowatt hour. What's a kilowatt hour? If you use a little battery to power an appliance like a radio or a Walkman, use a AAA sized battery. That little battery, if you don't abuse it, will over its life produce 1 watt hour of energy. It will deliver 1 watt hour.
The life of that battery.
Over the life of that battery. So this is 588,000 of those batteries is what I'm using here.
And are these approximately 30-day periods, or?
Well, this one was 29, but they're nominally 30-day periods. There's a billing cycle and so forth. So I pay 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and that's risen substantially. I was paying in the neighborhood of 5 cents a kilowatt hour a couple of years ago. And a number of things have led to that. If you go back and look at the rate cases that led to these increases, it's been net power costs, some volatility in natural gas prices has caused some of that. And they're paying for new equipment. They're paying for wind plants. They're paying for, I don't think Rocky Mountain Power is paying for any solar at this point, but they're paying for new transmission lines and substations. And so they put that into the rates because the rates are forward-looking. They think that the costs of all of that equipment will be effective within the period covered by these rate cases, and they try to recover their money in advance. It's a guess. And what will happen a few years down the road when there's another rate case is they'll try to make up for any money that they felt they were denied because of circumstances and so forth. But you'll notice there's a net power cost here, and that's another 3.8 cents per kilowatt hour. So the net power costs are a significant amount of the cost of energy that I'm using, and many of those are market purchases. And as you know, when electricity gets scarce, the people who still have electricity that they can guarantee that they can deliver will charge quite a bit. They'll charge as much as they can because their plants don't run all the time. And then there are these oddball things. A renewable revenue adjustment. If Rocky Mountain Power made a little extra profit on selling renewable energy certificates or whatever, the customer gets something back that is so small you don't notice it. Out of a $100 bill, mine was 36 cents that I got back. And there is customer efficiency services. I'm not entirely sure what goes into that category, but here's an interesting one, which is a carbon capture compliance. And you'll notice I got charged 0.12 cents per kilowatt hour for that. That is to pay for studies of how Rocky Mountain Power is eventually going to implement carbon capture in their thermal power plants. And all the other utilities, anyone who owns a generating facility in Wyoming.
So in the utility business, it's not a cost of doing business that's absorbed. It's authorized fully in the front end and therefore part of the bill.
You know, it's interesting. You look at all of the categories here and you go, what's ever on the shareholders, right? There doesn't seem to be much on the shareholders. It's the ratepayers cover it all. And I have no objection to ratepayers covering it all if it's run competently. But some of this stuff, this carbon capture compliance stuff, was dictated by our legislature, 2020, I think that's when it came in, where they said by 2030, you have to begin making your power generation low carbon. And so if you have a coal-fired power plant, coal is largely carbon, and you burn coal, you make a lot of carbon dioxide. It's a cheap fuel. Its price is very predictable, but it produces quite a bit of carbon dioxide. And so the legislature said the only way we're ever going to continue running our coal-fired power plants, because otherwise people are going to demand they be shut down, is if we can capture the carbon dioxide and do something with it. And so by 2030, the power companies have to begin becoming low carbon power generators, and that has to be completed, I think, by July 1st, 2032. They have to be a low power.
Who audits
or low carbon?
Who audits a utility's adherence to those expectations by the legislature?
Well, the Public Service Commission will certainly do some of that. And of course, the power companies are constantly involved with special interest groups who are trying to make sure that they're adhering to things like, I suppose, Greenpeace and the Sierra Club get involved, and they get involved in almost every rate case.
Suppliers to industry could also be one source of a type of audit, in that if you're able to show the science of your equipment providing this type of thing, then you might lobby with greater influence or leverage to government to impose the expectations that these equipments are required.
Sure.
Maybe.
And, you know, you'd have to go through some kind of an audit where they would look at your carbon capture unit over the course of a year, and they'd say it was operating properly, and here's how much carbon dioxide it captured.
What are some of the promises on the horizon for carbon capture utilization?
You know, one of the things that you could do with carbon dioxide is you can use it to do tertiary recovery of oil in old oil fields. You can put it underground. The problem with using carbon capture on a power plant, and then you trying to use the carbon dioxide to stimulate an oil field,
Transportation.
is that you've got transportation costs in there, but you have a scheduling issue too. You're trying to schedule a power plant against the needs of an oil field recovery system. And the thing that you don't want to do is have to store the carbon dioxide twice, because you're unable to use it on the distant end at exactly the time they're producing it on this end. I think that's a killer of a problem right there. But I mean, carbon dioxide is a valuable commodity, as you know. In fact, oil companies drill for carbon dioxide underground so that they can use it for tertiary recovery in oil fields, right? So the difficult thing is that we're insisting that everybody become low carbon producers. There may not be markets for this carbon dioxide, and all we'll do is put work into capturing and compressing that gas to put it underground in a saline formation, and it's just a cost of producing power then. And I've tried to show people that for that particular power plant, it will increase its cost of delivery of energy by about 80%. If it's a coal-fired power plant, it'll be less if it's a natural gas plant, because natural gas doesn't produce as much carbon dioxide per unit of energy delivered. So at any rate, as you know, I've been somewhat involved in the effort to remove that Section 18 of Title 37 that demands that thermal power become a low carbon producer. And I thought just to show you that none of these stay fixed in one rate case after another. Here's the bill from the same period the year before, and you'll notice that in this one there's two energy charges, and one of them is for energy up to 500 kilowatt hours, and the other is for energy over 500 kilowatt hours, and you paid at that time a different rate for the two. Well, somehow in a rate case, these two got combined together in a single energy charge, and so we don't see energy charges by amount of energy use any longer. But it's just an example that things like that may come back again. Okay, and let's see, what have I here? Well, let's now talk a little bit. If you wanted to take a break, this would be a good spot to take a break.
We'll do just that. Dr. Kevin Kilty, today on the Talk Shop, reading your utility bills, brought to you by Pole Mountain Pharmacy, dedicated to the health and wellness of Southeast Wyoming from their location at 4th and Harney.